Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and thank you so much for joining. We're going to go ahead and kick it off for the sake of time. You're here for today's demonstration, no-code bidirectional integration between Hexagon EAM and Esri ArcGIS with the Geonexus Integration Platform. My name is 𝐍𝐨-𝐂𝐨𝐿, and I'm a marketing coordinator here at Geonexus, and I'm happy to be joined by Josh Swenson, our VP of Revenue Operations, to help me address some of the questions you might be having after the end of the demonstration. Today, we're going to be showing a recorded demonstration of 𝐍𝐨, our VP of Strategic Product Management, featuring the no-code Hexagon EAM and Esri ArcGIS connectors within the Geonexus Integration Platform. 𝐍𝐨 will provide a more comprehensive overview of the workflow in his portion of the presentation, but at a very high level, we will explore a few different modifications made by users to a hydrant in ArcGIS and Hexagon EAM, and then observe how these changes are seamlessly synchronized into the other systems through GIP. Geonexus is a software company, and our product, the Geonexus Integration Platform, also known as GIP, redefines the custom code approach to integration by providing users with a fully supported, easy-to-use, proven platform for system integration. This simplifies the configuration and management of many integrations across the enterprise, all with little to no code required. Within the platform, there's really three main components. The first is simplified configuration. To set up an integration within the platform, we provide an easy-to-navigate user interface that relies on a few different basic login credentials to quickly connect your enterprise systems with little to no code required. Once your systems are connected, you can quickly set up your synchronization rules by utilizing drop-down menu configurations. This allows additions or modifications to be made on the fly, with again, little to no code required. The second is automated synchronization. So once your systems are connected within the platform, we can help you automate and schedule your synchronization on a specified task. If you have a system of record established already, or would like to set one, we can help you synchronize your data bidirectionally as well if you'd like. The last is active reporting. So once you've configured your integration and you have your synchronization running on a schedule, we provide in-depth reports every time the synchronization has run to show that everything has gone as intended. In the demo, we will show this a bit more in depth, but some of the benefits our reporting can provide are detailed descriptions of any errors, orphans, discrepancies, and more that may have occurred. How we simplify integration even further is through our library of connectors you can see on the screen below. Each one of these connectors understands the unique business logic of each system and are constantly upgraded to allow you to take advantage of the latest and greatest system features with no fears of software version lock or downtime. So now that you've heard a bit about Geonexus, I'll dive right into the demonstration.
My name is Umesh Menon. I oversee our product team and the roadmap for our products at Geonexus. So for this demo, just a couple things I wanted to go through. There's a couple scenarios I'm going to go through, and in doing that, I'm going to show you some different functionalities of the software. So the first scenario is a new hydrant being installed. So our goal of this is we'll create this hydrant in GIS, execute the integration platform, and then see that record created in the Hexagon EAM system. So the goal here is to see that data flow happen kind of from that beginning life cycle all the way to Hexagon. So that's the first scenario we're going to go through. The second scenario is going to go kind of the other way, where the asset's been created, the one that we just created, and we're going to do an update to that asset in Hexagon. We're going to run the integration platform again, and we're going to go to Esri to see that update actually happened within Esri. So those are sort of the goals of the two scenarios I plan to go through today. So this is our application, Geonexus Integration Platform, or GIP. It's an on-prem desktop application that's typically installed on a Windows application server. Just to orient you to the application, on the left side, we have what we call the Project Explorer. And this is where you access the different functions to configure and execute the synchronization. And so within GIP, we have this concept of workspaces and projects, which allow you to kind of organize your configurations. You may want to organize them by data categories like water, gas, electric, maybe by environment, dev, test, prod, or maybe how you schedule your synchronization. So maybe you have your daily syncs, your weekly syncs, or your monthly syncs. So we provide some flexibility in how you want to organize that based on how your structure is set up. So within my Project Explorer, I'm looking at one project here, and you kind of see the same set of things in each project. The first two items here are called the console and reports. This is really related to the execution of the software. So I'm going to circle back to this. I'm going to talk about the configuration aspects first, which are all the things that are below here. So the first thing that we'll talk about is the connection. So this is where you establish the connections with your edge system. So I'm going to expand that out a little bit. And I've got two connections already set up here. One is an Esri geodatabase connection, and one's a Hexagon EAM connection. If I right-click on connections, you'll see that I get an add new connection. And in the slide previously, we showed a library of connectors. So these are all the different connectors that we have currently available to us. So just focusing on the ones that we're talking about today, this Esri connection, a few different ways we can connect to Esri. We can connect to ArcGIS Enterprise, Geodatabase connection, ArcGIS Online, Services, and SQL Workspace. So a few different ways and flavors of connecting to Esri. The Hexagon EAM, I'm going to show this a little bit more with the connection we have set up. IBM Maximo, Oracle Utilities. So this is to connect to the work and asset management as well as their OUAF, the C2M application for CIS. So on-premise or the cloud services versions. We have a RDBMS connector here that can connect to Oracle or SQL Server databases, and a generic REST connector to connect to systems that have JSON REST APIs. So we can actually configure that within our tool. And then an SAP connector. So these are the connectors that we have available to us. I'll jump into the connections that I have set up right now so you can get an idea of what it's like to actually just set one of these up. If you've been into ArcGIS, you'll probably see some things that are familiar to you. And these are the things that we put in to make that connection. So you've got your instance, your database, username, and password. We also allow the ability to synchronize to a specific version within Esri. You could synchronize to default, or you can synchronize to a specific version. And this is really all up to the organization and how they like to have their data synchronized. Within this, we also have this validate button here that'll validate my connection with that system. So here my validation is successful. This is really handy when you're doing your initial configuration, just to make sure that you're connecting to your systems correctly. If there's any issues, you'll get error messages back, and you kind of work through those as you're configuring. So that's my ArcGIS connection that I'm establishing. Let me open up my Hexagon EAM connection. And similarly here, all I'm putting in is my service URL, username, password. We also support multi-tenant capability here. So you just put in the tenant that you're connecting to. And likewise, I've got the validate button here that'll tell me, am I connected to the system? Are there any issues there? We also have this info button here that tells you a little bit about the underlying technologies of the system you're connecting to. So you can see some of the database information and things like that come up. So you can review that as well in case you have multiple systems connected. So that's the first step in the process, is just setting up those connections, making sure you can connect that way. A couple other things that we can do here. One is value lists. So this is our translation functionality. So a most typical use case of this is if we have domain backlists in each system. So you may be using like coded values in Esri, and you may have a text description in your EAM system. So what we can actually do here is set up that translation within the middleware itself. So that translation occurs during the processing. So there's nothing else that needs to be done outside. That can all be set up within the tool. So you can set up static lists, or you can set up a SQL that will pull in those values based on what you have set up. So that's a translation functionality. And then rules template is a new functionality that we rolled out recently. And this is really the ability to create standardized mapping rules so you can use for future configurations. It's really great if you have a high volume of mappings that you have set up for your rules. So it'll help speed up that configuration timeline when you're setting up new integrations. But let's get to the meat of kind of where we do everything. That's all within the data sets. So let me expand that out a bit here so you can see that. So this is where we apply the mapping rules for the synchronization. So think of a data set as a container of data where you're going to do your processing. So within this, we specify specific groupings of data that where we want to apply our rules. So each of these items here is a separate data set that we have set up. So here I've got my hydrants creates. This is creating a hydrant into 𝐋𝐿 EAM. And there's a lot of flexibility in how you want to set up your data sets here. I've got them separated out by sort of operation, but you can actually do all of these operations within one data set. So within this data set, I've given it a name, and then the first thing I'm going to do is define my data sources. So let me open up my GIS data source here. So you give it a name, and really what you're doing here is you're saying, here's my database, my owner, and most importantly is what table am I hitting? So I'm hitting my W hydrant table here, my feature class for my table. And then that might be where you want to stop, or you could even do further filtering here with the where clause, and you can get even more granular with the area of data that you want to hit. So in this specific case, for demo purposes, I'm hitting this equip num tag like 𝐷HYD. I'm just really concerned about that set of data for this demo. So this is how you define your data source for your GIS side. And then likewise on the Hexagon side, you're going to set up a data source there. And here, what you're doing is you're saying what my organization, my function, whether I'm dealing with assets, positions, systems. So here I'm dealing with assets specifically. And the way we filter within our Hexagon system is we use the data spy functionality in our system. So if you set up your data spy within Hexagon, we can actually pull that in. That gets pulled into our system. So here I've got a data spy set up for demo installed hydrants. So this is the filtering mechanism I'm using to align to my GIS side. So that's the big step here in aligning your data, is really just to setting this up. And within each one of these, we have this validate button here too, similar to what we have in the connections. And this is really just to validate that everything is working correctly. Things that I've selected are correct. If I've got a where clause in, does my where clause have the correct syntax in there and that type of thing to communicate with that edge system. So that's really the purpose here of setting up the data source. And then the next thing is setting up your synchronization rules. So this is really the mapping between your source and targets. So within each data source, my target, I set up the rules that I want to apply. So here I've got my create rules that I've set up, and this is the mapping exercise that goes on. So I've got my source here on the left side. I'm selecting my source, data source, my attribute types, and what my attributes are. And then my right side, I'm selecting the target. So what is my attribute type and what is my actual attribute name? So if I double click into my attribute type, there's a few different items that I have here. I'll start with default since I have this selected. And this is really the ability to just send a default value into the edge system. And where this comes into play is if geo, in this case, is always going to be sent on a create into that organization field, and you don't have geo or you don't have this value set up in GIS, you can actually set this up right here in GIP rather than having your admin do a schema change and create a new field in GIS. This is always going to be done anytime there's a create. No reason to do this in GIS, just do it right from the system itself. So I've got a few default values like that I'm kind of forcing in for the create because that's what's going to happen each time. Likewise, I've got some fields, and these are kind of attributes that are set up. And so when I select field, what the system will do is look into all the fields that are available to me on that W hydrant table. So it's actually pulling in all the attributes that are there. And I've selected loc description here, loc DESC. And this is what I'm going to map here as my source. And I'm mapping that to my Hexagon description field. Just going back here, just so we can see some of the other things to highlight. We also have a calculated attribute type. And what this allows us to do is some further kind of translation. So if you want to do things like concatenations and trims, you have that ability to do that within the tool. Once you set up that calculated value, you can come here and select calculated and bring in that field. From the GIS side, you can also hit a related table. If you have a related table to, let's say, the W hydrant, you're using relationship classes, you can select related, and we look into that field to pull in all those fields that are there. And shape data. We can bring in shape data and then transform that to your Hexagon side. So a few different options there. Here on the, just to show you a little bit about what you see on the hexagon side. So field, similar, these are really attributes from the hexagon side that I'm looking into. So I'm going to select field, and then when I do select into my drop down here, I'm going to get the list of fields that are being pulled in from my hexagon system that I've connected to. So try to make this as easy as possible for you to come in here and really just lay out all the rules and all the mapping rules. It's as simple as that, just really pull downs that we supply to the end user to be able to do this. One other functionality I wanted to call out here that's really handy, especially during testing phase, is the preview mode functionality. So what this does is it will act as though it's actually going to, we have two modes. One is preview, one is commit. Commit is actually what's making the change in the system, whether it's updating a record or creating a record and actually making that commit to that system. The preview mode kind of stages it like it's going to do it, but doesn't actually do it. And it's really handy when you're configuring, so you can see if you got your configuration correct, or if you're running into any issues that may need to be resolved in the edge systems. It's a really handy functionality to have within the tool. So let's go back up here. I'm going to open up the console and talk a little bit about the execution. So let me go to my GIS side so I can show you what we have set up here before I actually run this. So what I'm in ArcMap right now. I'm looking at my W hydrant table. I've actually already created a record here. This is a 𝐍𝐴-𝐵𝐿5. And if I go to that record, I've got an install date. I've got a location description. And let's go ahead and I'm going to edit this description and just add something to it. And the other thing in here is I've got a bonnet color of blue, and that's another mapping that I have synchronized right now. So let's go ahead and save that. So I've got a record set up here. And then if I go over to my hexagon system, as I kind of went through, we've got a data spy setup called demo installed hydrants. So I'm just going to refresh that and just take a look here. And I was just making sure I don't have 𝐍𝐴-𝐵𝐿5 anywhere in here, right? So before I kick that off, I just wanted to just check that to make sure that that record doesn't actually exist there yet. So now I'm going to come back to my console. I've got everything set up. So I'm going to hit the Start Synchronizer button. And there's a couple ways to execute the synchronization process. One is this way, manually through the console. The other way is to schedule it using a task scheduler. So kind of two ways you can do it. Majority of our customers, once everything is configured and set up, they'll usually schedule it to run at the frequency they like to run the synchronization. Majority of them will run it on a daily, kind of nightly schedule. Some of them run it maybe a couple times a day. Some of them, depending on the urgency of the data, might do it weekly. So really up to the organization how frequently they want to see that. But this console view, whether you're running in a manual or scheduled view, you can connect to this console even during scheduled view to see what the progress is of your synchronization. So once this runs, you'll start getting some stats here. There's some internal steps that it's running through, and then it's actually running through the data set that we had set up that I walked through, and it's showing that there's one create that occurred here. So let's actually go take a look at the hexagon system, and I'm just going to refresh that data spy, and the 005 did come through. And let's take a quick look at that. That's the one that I updated with demo and that date of 7/24. I'm going to go down just to look at my user-defined fields. And here's that bonnet color that I had mapped in my synchronization rules. And there I had the color of blue that was set up there. Now, I'm going to go here and do an update to that and change that to yellow. And I'm going to save it. I'm going to make an update. And this is scenario 2 that I'm kind of running through. So I'm just going to save that to yellow. And what I need to do is enable that other data sets. Let me do that. And while that's going to kick off, save all that and enable. Save that configuration. Start that. And while that's running, I'm going to go take a look at my report. So after the synchronization runs, every time it runs, at the completion, it's going to come out with a report. So this is the report that just ran from the last run of that create. If I click on, I've got some bookmarks here, allow me to sort of jump to the different areas. But the final status report is what gives me the stats of what happened, very similar to what you see in the console. You know, how many records did we extract? How many got updated, created? How much time did everything take? And some rate information here as well. If I go down here, if there were any errors that we got back from the system, it could be like a connection error. It could be maybe something up with the data types not going into the system correctly. We'll get that information back. Orphans are if I have a record on one side, but I don't have a matching record on the other side. So allow you to go take a look at that from a cleanup perspective and see kind of what was going on there. Links provide you, have this functionality really provide for asset swap type scenarios. That's why we have links. Generated keys, if you don't have maybe a key for us to align with or to use, we have the ability to generate keys within the system to use for that alignment purposes. The create section tells you about all the creates that occurred during that synchronization run. And that was really the purpose of that data set, was to do that. And so if I look here for that hydrant that I created into Hexagon, I have, shows you what the source attribute on the GIS side was, the target attributes on this side, and then the values, actual values that we populated in. So our goal here is to provide as much transparency as possible into the report so you feel comfortable about what happened during that synchronization run. Likewise, during the updates, if there are updates, and I'll show you in the next report after that's completed running, any discrepancies. So if there was errors that we were seeing, we'll show the discrepancies from the report, just kind of showing you, here's the record that was impacted by the error. Might give you some insight into kind of why that error happened, just so you don't have to actually go look back into your edge system. We're trying to make this report as exhaustive as possible so that you can get all the information from it. Duplicates, if there's duplicates of those keys that we have aligned, that'll show up here. Any deletes that we have set up, and any warnings. So that's the report. There's a lot that we have here and that we provide to users. And then in terms of how you access this report, you can access it right from the tool, but we also allow it to be emailed out to an individual or a set of individuals. And then there's different in terms of how you want to receive it. Maybe you want to receive it every time. Maybe you only want to receive it when you have errors. So you can set up to that kind of level of when you want to receive the report, when it's important to you. So if I take a look at my 𝐍𝐴-𝐻𝐸-05, just going to make sure that one ran through. So it runs through this process of the internal processes of loading the configuration each time. And what it's doing in these steps is really validating to make sure that the configuration is correct. If there's any issues with the configuration at this step, we'll get an error message. It will come back and tell us that there was an issue there. Go back to, okay, looks like that went through. So when I'm in ArcMap, I just need to, you can see it still says blue. Stop editing, start editing again, and you can see that changed to yellow. So from that update that I made previously in Hexagon for that user-defined field, I have that map going in the other way and updated to yellow. And if I go to my reports, I go to my update section. So this was the record that I updated in my Hexagon system, the user-defined field being the source, bonnet color being the field on the GIS side. And what we provide here on updates is we can show the old value. What was it before the change happened, and what is the new value here? So again, just showing the transparency of what we're providing to the user in terms of the synchronization, it running, showing you exactly what happened when it's synchronized. All right, and that concludes what I wanted to show for the demo today. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna open it up for questions now. And while I give you guys the time to type in your questions, I just wanted to mention that this is one of the many use cases enabled by the Geonexus Integration Platform. So if you're looking for a specific topic or feature, please request it in the Q&A panel or in the survey after the demonstration. We would love to hear what you're looking for. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh to help address some of the questions you're having today. Josh.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. And hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah, as Katie said, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A box that's to the right of your webinar interface, bottom right, I believe. Feel free to type in a question there, and I'll work through some of these that have already come in. I'll start with the easiest one here. Around will the recording be available after the webinar? Yes, that's the easiest question and answer I can give you today. So yeah, Katie does a great job of not only putting these on, but after the fact, she'll follow up with all the registrants, and she will share the recording. So look in your inbox within the next day or two. As Katie gets the recording out, we have to do some editing and set up the recording in the right way, and then we'll email it out to the group. So great question there. A question about reporting. It's asking about, is Geonexus just a connection platform, or is there a reporting tool for any of the systems that it's connected to? Josh, great name, great question. Yeah, there's reporting, as was shown in the demo. There's reporting that's available, and reading into the question a little bit, yes, it reports on kind of the integration around the two systems that are there, right? So as we walk through in the demo, showing you kind of how an integration is configured, and the different out-of-the-box tools that are there for simplifying the setup of the integration, and then showing how you can set the synchronization rules to show when something's created, something's updated. The reporting kind of follows that, right? And it will show things like updates, creates, orphans, and it does that for any system the integration is set up for. So, hopefully, Josh, that answers your question there. If there's more that's needed around that, please feel free to reach out to us. I think on the next slide, we'll share our information, and I'd be happy to either answer your question through an email or jump on a call and kind of go more in depth if you have a specific question there. Does this work for ArcGIS Pro or only ArcMap? It's all the Esri products. So, one of the things that Umesh in the recording went into a little bit there, Taylor, was, some specific questions around, or some specifics around the different connectors that we have. So, just kind of reiterating that again, the Geonexus Integration Platform, is built with this idea of a library of connectors. So we have connectors for Esri, for SAP, for Hexagon, as we showed today, for IBM Maximo, and several different products. And then we have some more flexible connectors that aren't system specific. REST API connector, RDBMS connector, we've talked about those in past demos. Those are a little bit more generic and again, a little bit more flexible to help connect to other systems, whatever they may be. Back to the Esri connector, that is something that has been around as long as we have, so 14 years now. We've had this Esri connector, and at this point we connect to just about every Esri product that's available. So great question, appreciate that one. And then there's a question around kind of range for an integration and how integrations work. I would have to kind of dig into your specific use case to really give you a ballpark range for integration. What I can say is two things. So there's another question. I'll combine this question around ballpark range and how integration implementation works. So starting with implementation, there's a question around, is this something that you handle on your own, or is this something that Geonexus handles? The question is both, right? The idea behind the Geonexus Integration Platform is that, we're really giving you a set of out-of-the-box functionality, really a tool to help not only set up your integrations, but to manage your integrations over lifetime, right? We want to replace custom scripts that are out there. We want to replace the need for development resources to set up and manage integrations so that they can work on other things. Or if it's a development resources job to manage the integrations, they can use the tool or the tools that we have in the platform to manage those, right? And so how does a typical project look? Typically what we do is we come in, we have, the customer identify a couple of data sources that they would like to set up as kind of the beginning use case around integrations. We'll do the implementation with our resources at Geonexus. and we'll use our professional services team to set those up, and this is the important part, train you on how to use the tool so that you can go forward using it. With our tool comes a full support team and process. So once you're to that point that you're using the tool to set up and manage integrations, we're there to answer questions. We're there if you need to reach out to us and you need any help along that way, we're there to help you, right? And so then from there, in terms of kind of how we price those projects, it's really about how much data you want us to handle, right? If you come in and you say, look, we don't have the resources to do all of this, we have all these data sources that we want to set up for integration, for synchronization, we can quote you on that. If you want to do that kind of what we call an onboarding project, where we do a couple of them and then we train you, we would price accordingly. So, to the person that asked the question about the ballpark range, I'd be happy to connect with you and kind of talk about your specific use case and give you an understanding of what price would look like for that. And then there's back to the reporting question, does it replace Crystal reports? No, Josh, the reporting around, the reporting of Geonexus is just around, the integration itself. It would not replace a tool like that. With that said, we do have the ability and have in the past with, some folks that are using the platform, pretty robustly. We do have the ability to sync into some of your other reporting tools and the ability to dump other data from different systems in, through a REST API connector, dump that data through the integration into a larger BI tool so you can have a holistic view of kind of all of those systems, including your integration data. So hopefully that helps to answer the question there around reporting. Looking at some of the others that are coming in, great questions. Just trying to scroll through and make sure I don't miss anything. So there's a couple questions here I'll follow up on. I need more context to understand exactly what's being asked here. All right, looks like some of these are thank yous. I appreciate that. It looks like we've answered questions. There's a question about can you work with on-prem databases or cloud only? Great question. Appreciate that one. We can work with both, right? So Geonexus as a tool is something that you will install on-prem. With that said, your kind of combination of systems, whether it's two or multiple, right? And the platform can really do that, right? It has the ability to support what we call multi-point integrations, right? So if you're going, in this case, we talked about Esri to Hexagon. If you have something that is, GIS to EAM to, an example would be customer information system. We're starting to work more with ADMS, right? And there are all of these different systems that now want GIS connected to them or building an ecosystem around GIS. Where those systems sit, it doesn't matter. Our tool will be installed on-prem. That typically helps with some of the security factors that you have to think through. But then in terms of where you're connecting to, it can be either, right? In a combination of those. So there's different ways to do it. We could dig into your specific system. So hopefully that answers the question there. Couple others that we'll reach out via email and make sure that we answer there and get a little bit more context too. So that we can help answer there. But I think for the time being, that kind of works through all the questions I have, Katie. And again, yep, that's what I was looking for. Make sure we share our information. If you want to reach out with more specifics, please feel free to send me an email. You can send Katie an email as well, and we'll work together to get those answered. But Katie, as always, I appreciate you setting this up. You do a great job with these demos. And I want to reiterate what Katie said. If there's something that you're looking for specifically, whether it's a system or a use case that you're looking for specifically, please reach out to us and let us know. And we can either come back to you individually and show you some things, or it gives us a great idea for the next of these demos. These demos have been very well received, from our customer base and for those that are looking at integrations. And we really want to put these out for you so that they answer the questions that you have and really give you an understanding of how GeoNexus can solve your specific challenges. So please feel free to share that with us, and we'll be happy to set up, kind of that specific demo in the future.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate your help in answering those questions today. And again, if you prefer to kind of type in your questions or topic recommendations, there will be a survey once the demo ends today. So thanks everyone for joining. Happy New Year, and I hope you all have a great remainder of your day. Thanks again.